Guys, we want to talk about getting high up on the mountain and how some jobs create unique advantages and unique situations that other jobs may not challenge. This particular project that we're going to show some details on is in Kirkwood, California. If you're not familiar with Kirkwood, it was the site of the Winter Games for the Olympics several years ago, but it is a famous ski resort now owned by the same company that owns Vail Ski Resorts in Colorado and other places across the world. Very unique ski resort. Very fun place to be at. I've spent many months up there, always working, never skiing. A little bit of an overview about it. The Heavenly Ski Resort's also owned by Kirkwood. It's part of the Heavenly family. It's part of the Vail family. Its main lodge is about 43,000 square feet, which in itself is not that big, but for a ski resort. It's at close to 8,000 feet elevation at the base and 10,000 square feet at the top. So it's pretty far up into the mountains. The roads in it going to it are very narrow, and it is in the mountains, so they're not only very narrow, but very steep cliffs going up on one side and very steep cliffs going down on the other side. So a little bit treacherous when you're carrying equipment back and forth up. The average snowfall there is about 475 inches a year. So they get lots of snow up there. In 2005 and 6 season, they had 800 inches of snow. The thing about snow up in this area, it's so cold, is once you get snow, it don't melt until August or September. We're out there working one 4th of July, and we got 4 inches of new snow on the 4th of July out there. So it continues to snow there into July. And then you get what they call their summer in the last of July, August, and September. So a little bit of a different place to live, particularly if you're not a skier and don't know how to do the ski resort thing. It is a paradise for people skiing. It is a nightmare for a restore. And this is a picture of the entire Kirkwood community from atop of one of the mountains at night when everything's lit up and all the lights and the glamour are on and that sort of thing. You see on the bottom right picture that little dot up there at about 11 o'clock, and that's actually a skier coming off the side of that. I call it a cliff. They would call it a ski jump, but coming off that, that is one of the level 5 slopes that they have up there that takes an experienced skier to get on. So pretty nice place to visit. It's a really hard place to work. Getting up and down the mountain is very difficult. Again, you have very steep cliffs on one side that have the avalanche dangers. Sometimes the roads will be closed for 2, 3, 4 hours while avalanche control is doing their thing, and they block the roads to do that. Sometimes they'll be closed for a wreck. It's a 2-lane road going in, 2 lanes coming out. And you can see in the center picture there the snow plow. So sometimes you got walls of snow there that can go up to 20, 30 feet high, just straight up, and you just hope those banks of snow don't fall down on you and bury you when you're going up through there. So getting back and forth to the job can be its own set of challenges. The higher you go, the narrower it gets as you go through the mountains. And as you can see to the left, it's not a place where you want to slip off the road and tumble down, because you won't get a second chance at that. It's very dangerous, very treacherous, very icy, and lots of lots of different terrain, not only in semi trucks and trailer trucks pulling your equipment, or in pickups with trailers and that sort of thing, but just in passenger vehicles getting up and down the road. A lot of times they have fast and very unexpected snowfalls. It is over the top of the mountain in the Sahara Nevada. The winds come off the Pacific Ocean, and when they hit the backside of the mountain and come over the mountain, they can sort of create their own weather pattern, as a lot of mountain regions do. But they don't need to they don't get a weather forecast, and they don't need to watch TV to figure out what's going to happen when the cold winds comes up over, and it creates their own weather pattern there, and it'll start snowing when nobody knew that it was going to snow. So you can get really, really deep snows there in dangerous conditions. So show you this little video of some stuff that sort of went on out there.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
During this COVID-19 crisis, homeless kids are alone, afraid, and in danger. Covenant House provides shelter, food, medical care, and love to thousands of kids every night. To help or to get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
We're learning more about a tragic accident in Lake Tahoe where a mother and her son were killed by a mound of falling snow at Kirkwood Resort this past weekend. Tonight, their San Francisco neighbors, friends, and coworkers are paying tribute. KTVU's Rob Malcolm is in the city now after talking with people who knew the victims. Rob.
Well, that's right. Good evening. Here at Temple Emmanuel, where the family attended, the synagogue is coming together, and their thoughts now are with a young father who will be raising his two young daughters without their mother. A large handwritten note sits in the doorway of the family's inner Sunset home, simply reading, "Dear Sophie, Daria, Mr. David, we are incredibly sorry for your loss. Neighbors are remembering the mother and 7-year-old boy who lived next door."
He was so cute too, because he'd always say hi and he'd try to pet the dog.
They're great, tight little family. You know, nice family unit.
In a freak accident, 50-year-old Olga Perkovic and her 7-year-old son, Aaron Goodstein, were killed Sunday, buried by snow that slid off the roof of the Kirkwood Mountain Resort where they were staying. This is a look at the resort where it happened. This video was taken several years ago, and you can see the building with the slanted roofs. The storms late last week brought a lot of snow to the area, and a neighbor, Andrew Cohen, was also skiing in Tahoe that weekend.
So it was 8 feet of new snow, and that was all sitting on top of the roofs. Like, we saw it squall. We saw them cleaning off a lot of the roofs and cordoning off areas.
The 7-year-old victim attended the French-American International School in San Francisco, where his mother, educated at Cornell University with a doctorate in physics, also volunteered. The school coming to terms now with the tragedy.
We were devastated to learn of Aaron and Olga's passing, and our thoughts are with the family during this really difficult time right now. We have grief counselors on campus who are providing support for our students, teachers, family, staff.
The family also attended Temple Emmanuel, where the senior rabbi has been offering support.
But we want to just celebrate the gifts of who they were and be there with their family.
And once the bodies are returned to San Francisco, the synagogue here will proceed with 1 full month of mourning. They also say they will do anything they can in the future for this family. In Presidio Heights, Rob Malcolm, KTVU, Fox.
As you can see by the video, that the working in these areas can be extremely dangerous, and a lot of times we're working on the back side of the buildings to stay out of view of the public and to get into different entrances. And it's easy to get caught up into some of that, and they don't always take the same safety precautions on the back side of these buildings as they do on the front side. We've had people walk up to descants that are sitting on snowbanks and just sort of sink 6 or 8 feet down and have to dig them out of the snow where the heat from the dehumidifiers, the desiccant dehumidifiers, have sort of softened the snow up, if you will, and it just makes it treacherous. As I said in the video, at that point in time, they had several feet of snow that had piled up on a roof, much like this picture that we're looking at here. As you can see, the snow here is up to the 3rd level. You cannot see the 1st level. It is completely under the snowbank. The 2nd level there on the left side of the picture, you can see a little bit of it, but then you see the 3rd level is fairly clear. So you can't, that 1st level is just completely buried. And these snows can come very sudden. They can come quickly. It'll bury your equipment and trucks and people. And you have to be ready when you go into an area like this, whether it be, we've done a lot at the ski resorts in Snowshoe Mountain in West Virginia area over in there. We've done a lot here at Kirkwood. So when you get into these remote villages that house ski resorts, you've got to be really careful and be on your toes, if you will. I know all of us have talked about tree wells, but don't go around trees while you're there because they have soft spots in the snow and you can fall into those, and you'll be found in September, October when the thaw comes. So you got to be real careful by there. 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts, that's hurricane force winds, can swirl over the top of those mountains and down through that valley that we showed in a previous photo. One point we're working out there, the winds at the top of the hill were 96 miles an hour. The winds at the bottom were 45 miles an hour, and the wind chill was 40 below zero. And we're trying to work out there setting up deskants to get things working. Very dangerous conditions. Not something you want to carry a light jacket and tennis shoes out there to work in. 2010, we worked a fire out there in the generator plant. This resort is so far up in the mountain, there is no electricity. It's way up in the mountains, way off the beaten path, and the entire town is run off of 4 2-meg generators. They house those 2-meg generators in one building to keep them in out of the weather, and so they can do proper maintenance on them. It takes 2 of the generators to run the town at any given point in time. If it gets extremely cold, they have to fire a 3rd one up, but they all are in the same building, so they went several weeks here without any electricity till they could get some rental units in and get those set up to be able to power the entire town of Kirkwood, to be able to get electricity there. So that also presents a different set of circumstances and gives you a better degree of difficulty when you're drying buildings, because these buildings are not designed to use a lot of electricity because they don't have a lot of electricity. And what they do have will be about 15 to 20 times more expensive than electricity is at your house, because they're running off of generators. They have to have fuel brought in by tanker trucks. Quite often the routes are closed and they can't get fuel up there, so they will curtail power usage when they do that to be able to run the essentials. It's not uncommon at all to be up there and trying to be working in rooms and drying rooms that are at 40 degrees, because that's as high as they'll allow the temperatures to be to conserve electricity. It's hard to dry walls and floors and ceilings and stuff at 40 degrees. So you have to adapt and overcome it and figure out a way to get it done in a timely fashion. This is another picture of the resort on a fairly nice day. You can see that things are groomed, and this looks like this is probably at the beginning of the season or the end of the season, when there's not really a lot of snow there, but it gives you a look at what it looks like on a slow and normal day when there's not a lot of snow around. getting the drying equipment up there in the snow-covered mountain. You can see screen left what some of the roads that you'll be traveling up look like. We got to one road one day and it said road closed for 7 miles. And we're like, well, maybe we can make it. It's only 7 miles. And we rounded the corner and the snowbank in front of us was about 9 feet tall. We said, well, maybe we can't make it. And so we had to take a 70-mile detour to get back around and go a different way. So it's very challenging. It's not something you want to just jump into the middle of. You got to do a lot of pre-planning to get up through there. So here's the descent sitting in the center of the picture there, the gray machine that was sitting on top of the snowbank that the guy sort of sunk himself in. Of course, descents produce heat. And as that descent sit there and ran for a day or two things happened. One of the technicians went out to check the descent, and the snow around it had gotten soft from the heat, and he plunged straight down, just like falling through ice on a lake, pretty much, and went about 6 or 8 feet down. And he had to get rescued and got brought up out of there. So you have to be a little bit careful when you're doing that. And notice how far the descent sits away from the building. Reason for that, you just can't get any closer because of the depth of the snow and the way that the buildings are built. They're not designed to be able to get to very easy unless you're walking through them. So that cools your air off. That presents more challenges to be able to get up into there. So it just makes things a lot more difficult when you're drying. Why use deskins over portables? Well, as we just talked about the electricity requirements, to load a building up with a bunch of portable equipment that's trying to run off the generators on the mountainside would just be devastating to their power grid up there, and to be able to keep the heat rolling in the buildings and that sort of thing, drawing that kind of power. And we need the heat on in the buildings to try to dry them. So we're already taxing the system by trying to get the heat pumped up to get the electricity that we need to have. And then all of a sudden we're trying to put a bunch of drying equipment in, and you can overrun those generators pretty quick. So you can do that in a normal building. We too often run in on commercials predominantly, throw a bunch of portables in there without thinking about how much we're loading the power system within any given building, no matter what's in a mountain resort or at a down in Florida by the ocean side. We don't know how much current they're pulling on that building. If they've got 400 available amps or whatever they got in a given building, and they're already running 420 available amps on it, they're already overtaxing the system, and now you're going to try to go in and pull to 300 more amps on it with portable equipment. So that's something you always need to be aware of when you're looking at buildings. It's how much power do they have available and how much extra power are we going to use, and that's when you have to determine if you're going to use generators or just simply use the power that the building has. Diesel fuel at this resort, if you run down to the local store and buy it, is around $7.50 a gallon. When it's about $2.50 a gallon down in Lake Tahoe, which is at the bottom of the hill. So that's a little difference in the cost just to get the diesel up there. So let's talk about some equipment and setup issues and how to do that. Obviously, in this drying scenario, heat is the name of the game, and this week's a good week to talk about heat with the polar vortex going on, and how to dry buildings and what you do. It's hard to dry a cold building. It's not impossible, but it's hard. So it's just hard to get evaporation when your wall surface temperature is 50, 60 degrees. You need to get those bumped up, and you already know that without talking too much about that. But you have to select what type of equipment you want if you need to add supplemental heat or anything to it. A little rare picture here of being able to see dirt at Kirkwood. So this is a gravel parking lot that they have cleared. They actually brought in loaders and cleared that for our behalf so we could park and get equipment there. And you can see propane. We're being able to sit there to run the heaters and to try to get some heat generated so we can get the buildings dry and by adding a little bit of heat. So where do you stay when you're doing this? If you don't have electricity there, you got very limited electricity, or let's say it's during the peak snow season and they don't have rooms available. Well, these rooms are renting for $1,500 to $2,000 a night during the peak season for people who will rent them. Most people do not. They will fly in from Switzerland or Europe or wherever ski people come from, way far away, and they own these condos year round just to wait on that perfect snowfall to get that fresh powder to ski down the hill on. And if you're a big skier, you know what I'm talking about. If you've never skied before in your life, like I have not, you simply hear the stories. So, but they keep these available, and they are not about to turn those over for some construction worker to stay in. So we talked about going down the hill to Lake Tahoe a while ago. I probably didn't mention down the hill's about 70 miles. And we've already showed you those treacherous roads. So you're looking at an hour and a half or 2 hour trip to go down the hill one way, and then have to come back up the hill to be able to do that. So you've got to worry about sleeping arrangements for your people. Sometimes you can stay there if you're in the off season, what little off season they have. And they do have an off season, but when there's not snow on the ground, they use the chairlifts to carry bikers up, and these bike enthusiasts will carry their bicycle up the hill and ride down the mountain slopes on a bicycle, much like somebody will that is skiing. So the fun never stops. They just keep going year round. How's the billing for this type of project different? Go ahead and raise your hand and hold it really high in the air if you think Xactimate will work on this project. Bill Giannone talks a lot about pricing that we go through here, and he talks about if it don't fit the exact Xactimate puzzle, then Xactimate don't work. Xactimate already almost never works on commercial projects, but now when you get a project like this, you know, are you going to get that service call fee, you know, for $75 for driving, you know, up that mountain road and getting there? And, you know, are you going to charge the pump price for diesel fuel and have to go all the way to town to get it, or pay $7 and something a gallon for it? So, you know, how does this pricing work different on that? And if you don't have your contract ready before you go start the job, your pricing's out the window. You have to have set pricing in your contract. You have to have an agreement in your contract before you get that done. The time to think about this is before you get this job. And then when you do get the job and create your scope and your pricing, you can go from there. This is the actual bill from going up there with some cutouts in it. Some of the dates have been changed and all this, but anyway, the equipment charges you've got other charges, you've got vehicle charges and expenses, and it just goes on and on and on. But they're going to be considerably different than the charges that you would have on a normal commercial job or even a normal residential job. Let's talk about O&P. If you'll notice, the O&P on this particular invoice is $310,450. So a lot of people, and you can go ahead and raise your hand again if you're not still holding it up and advocating for Xactimate here, but but you go ahead and hold your hand up again. How many of you think you can't get O&P on a job? We get O&P all the time. It just amounts to what's in your contract, how you sell that contract, and what you've got in there. O&P stands for overhead and profit. There's pretty much two ways to look at it. Some people put O&P on the bottom, as this invoice shows here. Some people just increase their line item by 20% and let it show in the line item. $310,450 is $310,450 either line you put it on. So you have to make a business decision on how you want to do that when you're talking about pricing your work. You've got to know what your work costs and what your cost of doing business is, and that's a build your own speech there to tell you about how to do that and how to get that down. But certainly not something you just want to roll over on and try to do this type of job at the same cost that you would do other jobs. So this is an example of an extreme job. We've worked at this particular resort with a couple of different companies, probably 40 times in the last 10 years. It is a repetitive job, and you know, the first thing you think, wow, why they have so many water breaks? Well, you remember I told you about the extreme cost of electricity. Well, everybody that owns these things cuts their heat off when they leave. They're not going to be there. And what happens when you cut your heat off? Well, pipes freeze and break. And during what little off season they have, there's nobody there. The place is deserted. So water pipe breaks. It runs sometimes for days and days before it's ever noticed, and then it winds up being a large water damage job. Worked 3 fires out there where they've had fairly major fires. So there is no fire department except the local fire truck that the resort owns, which stays in that same building with the generators. So, you know, very little fire suppression out there. And so they have quite a few jobs. And these are good jobs to go after when you have them. They're slow, and you're dealing with high-end property. You're dealing with high-end condominiums and stuff like that. So, but it does create a good challenge for you. My challenge to you is to sit around and think about this kind of stuff. And you know, when you pass a building that looks like it would be a unique challenge, you know, think, how could I dry that building? What challenges would that bring, and how would I overcome them? And as you start to get the education here through the CREST network and get the experience through that, and you start looking at those buildings, you'll be able to go to those jobs with a lot more confidence and get them done. So I'm Scott Tarpley with the CREST network. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you.